I wanted to talk about Minneapolis. Now, you might remember that after George Floyd was murdered, and there were demonstrations and there were riots and just mayhem in Minneapolis. The Minneapolis City Council got together, and actually 9 of the members of the Minneapolis City Council, which is a veto-proof majority. So a veto-proof majority of the Minneapolis City Council pledged. This is in June. This is in early June, to dismantle the police department. They promised to create a a system of public safety in a city, but with no basic armed police in the streets. They announced publicly that they believed that the police system could not be reformed. That council members stood before hundreds of people at a gathering outdoors, and they promised to begin the process of taking apart the police system as it existed. This was a huge win for the far left. This was a huge win for advocates, for people who are advocating not just to defund the police, but actually to dismantle the police, to get rid of the police. I did a show about this at the time. I connected it up to its kind of Rousseau roots, the idea that crime is not inherent in human nature, that crime is something that is created because of the institutions of civilization. It's our attempt to civilize people that causes them to become criminals. And if we get rid of the police, then crime will just plummet. It will go away. It will be eliminated. And Minneapolis took this seriously, passed this while the mayor said was opposed to it. A mayor who's pretty leftist. He said he opposed it. 9, a veto-proof majority of the city council. So the mayor could have vetoed any proposals, and it would have, the city council could have vetoed the mayor's no. They would have passed it anyway. They would have overridden this veto. And then the city council passed some ordinances to look into disbanding the police, and there was started to be movement towards this direction. And that's basically the last I heard about this. But it has turned out that a lot has happened in Minneapolis since then. Well, first, crime rates have gone through the roof. So crime has increased dramatically during the summer. And at the same time, some council members, shockingly, have been having second thoughts about their pledge. It turns out that even when they pledged, many of them were having second thoughts. You could think of it that they were afraid of being canceled. They were afraid of what their colleagues would think of them. They were primarily afraid of what the activists, the most vocal, the loudest, the most aggressive activists would think of them. But that indeed, even at the time, there was very little support for dismantling the police, for defunding the police, for doing away with the police department in Minneapolis. They went along because that's what they do. They went along because they were cowards. They went along because they were being intimidated. They went along because they thought that it was in their political self-interest to go along. But they soon discovered that it wasn't. It turns out, shockingly, for many of you would be my guess, that even people who vote Democratic, even minorities in this country, even the poor, actually want to have police. A vast majority of people, even on the left, a vast majority of people on the left want to have police. Don't want the police to be dismantled. There were 2 activist groups two activist groups that basically had been arguing for dismantling the police, Rousseauing Marx, Rousseau-influenced crazy far left people who had been arguing, but there were several hundred people. But the tens of thousands of people who live in Minneapolis neighborhoods, who actually suffer because of criminals abusing them, do not want the police dismantled. And they have argued to the council members, put pressure on the council members, and basically forced the council members to change their mind. And as I said, it turns out that even at the time of the pledge, these cowards didn't really believe that this was something they would actually do, actually go through with. It was more symbolism than anything else for them. Right? I mean, as Consigliere Andrew Johnson, one of the 9 members who supported the pledge in June, said in an interview that he meant the words, quote, in spirit, but not the letter. Another consigliere, Philip Cunningham, said that the language in the pledge was, quote, up for interpretation, and that even among council members, soon after the promise was made, it was very clear that most of us had interpreted that language differently. Lisa Bender, who is the council president and an adamant supporter of dismantling the police, had a long pause when she was asked if the council's statement had led to uncertainty at a pivotal moment in the city. She said, I think our pledge created confusion in the community and in our wards. In other words, they have suffered a massive backlash from their people who have said, stop this. So while defunding the police became a talking point for the far left and became an agenda item for the far left, feeding Republicans, who wanted to portray the left as completely nutty and insane, right? And they did, and they used that quite well. As that was gaining national momentum, it was actually being rescinded in Minneapolis. Minneapolis has changed its mind. We are not going to see the dismantling of the police force in Minneapolis. They were only, quote, kidding. And basically, they will reshuffle some dollars away from the police into something else. But nobody in Minneapolis, with the exception of a few crazy activists, actually wants to see this happen. And it won't happen. And it's not going to happen. And the reason I think this is an important story is because it has wider implications. We hear all the time, and all the time it is emphasized that, that the left has nutty ideas, that the left's proposals are crazy. And indeed, the far left proposals are completely insane and would destroy this country and would undermine civilization. But the majority of Americans, including, by the way, a majority of people on the left, broadly interpreted, including an overwhelming majority of Democrats, actually don't want the far left's agenda to pass. They have no interest in it. They recognize it for what it is. They recognize it for its destructive nature. And this is at the core of my belief, that if Democrats get elected, a lot of bad stuff will happen. But it's not the end of the world. Because most Democrats don't want the end of the world. Most people on the left don't want the insanity of Bernie Sanders or further to the left than Bernie Sanders. Indeed, I don't even believe Bernie Sanders wants the insanity of Bernie Sanders. But he would vote for it, others will not. And while Biden is terrible and Kamala Harris is awful, they are not going to bring about Armageddon and the end of the world. I mean, it'll be bad, as I said, it'll be bad. But there will be time to recover. There will be opportunities to recover.